Send in the clowns.
It's a special time, dear viewer. We have a podcast to do. It's that special, Saturday night? To spend time with your...
Saturday night.
To not spend time with your loved ones and listen to
Favorite podcast.
ill-informed, poorly educated degenerates on the internet.
Listen to your real loved ones, us.
Where love should be directed, through money.
To us.
Which podcast was it? There was a fairly bigger podcast where they were talking to people about loneliness. And they're like, you know what? If you feel lonely, subscribe to the podcast and pay into our Patreon.
Oh my God.
To be a part of the community, I guess.
Really jumpstart that parasocial relationship, you know? Just really get it going good. But make sure to give us money.
Yeah, well, you know, you could have friends, but you got to pay.
You got paid.
Silver may or may not come stumbling drunkenly in at a later time. But we have Jason. Jason, how's the weekend going?
Yeah, made it.
Yeah, you did. We're slightly early for reasons, but it's irrelevant because people listen to this when they listen to it. But.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I've been watching Samurai Jack. I'm on season 4.
Oh, Samurai Jack is good.
That's been fun. My favorite 2 episodes are the Demongo episode and the one where he meets the Scotsman for the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a solid show.
It is.
It's a solid show.
It is a solid show. Well, that wraps up your week. We can move on to Ross.
I'm trying to think if there's anything. I mean, I've been playing Princess Peach's Showtime.
I do like
it. A really charming video game, a really great experience. It's a lot of fun.
Good. I mean, all the Nintendo games are just a lot of fun.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I've been getting mired into video game politics and stuff going on, but that's something we can talk about later. So.
Oh, well, please do. Yeah. Did you play Mario? Was it Wonderful?
Mario Wonder. Yeah, I didn't finish that game. I played some of it. But yeah, I'm going to get back to that one. That one was, again, it's a Mario game. They just really nail like the gameplay and the visuals, and it's just a fun game.
It was fun. I liked the odd dynamic with the seed you would pick up and it would transform the level into being something completely different. And I just Nintendo puts out solid stuff. Despite the fact that apparently lately they are copyright striking people who are doing like homebrew mod stuff related to emulation. Because Nintendo is mega aggressive when it comes to to their IP.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it does make sense. It's kind of a bummer for us, but it makes sense. It's like they're not getting any money out of it, so why should you?
Well, look, here's the problem. Nintendo, for the longest time, did not give a crap about their rusty and old back catalog, especially when some of those back catalog games they had no intention of re-releasing because they didn't still hold the copyright for it, so they couldn't re-release stuff related to like movies and whatnot. So the only thing you could do to keep these games alive was to emulate. For years, that was the only thing you can do.
Right.
And now that Nintendo's come back with the Switch and the Wii, it started with sort of the Wii and stuff, where they had the you could buy old games for the console,
retro games and stuff.
Right, and the whole gimmick for the Switch is if you pay for the Switch Online, you get the emulation for the NES and SNES and the Sega if you pay more and whatnot. And they don't want people outside of their sort of economic bubble being able to access stuff because they want you trapped within that.
If they don't hold the copyright or the license anymore, then they should back off. But if it is theirs, it's annoying, but I kind of get it.
Well, but and that's at least they're now giving more and more of their games a way to be bought and used now.
That's true.
But God, for the longest time, it was just you'd get some GBA ports, like I remember those, but
and if your old system didn't work anymore, there was no way you could play your old games. So
that's why
I paid $300 for a Nintendo cart.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I don't throw out my consoles. I still have them.
Nope.
I don't trade them out, and I keep them around. And it looks like I'm a hoarder and a collector. Kind of am, but not necessarily. You see my console. There's like too many consoles.
Oh, yeah.
My home entertainment sort of setup. Ross, how's your week going?
Fascinating. It's been fascinating, Red.
Yeah, I know it has.
I noticed that I was Harley Quinn on the thumbnail, and I appreciate that.
That was all silver, yes.
Yeah, she gets good kaiju points. No, it was good. As we'll talk about, watch Joker 2.
Yeah.
Had our discussion, which will be out later on Megalopolis, which was, as we kind of talked about before, fascinating. But you'll get more on that later.
Yeah, well, I vaguely brought it up last week where it's like, oh, the movie's terrible, don't watch it. But Megalopolis is a fascinating dumpster fire of a film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is a mess.
Very much so.
It is a mess of a film to the point where we just recorded both of us talking about it because of how insane Megalopolis is. I'm not being hyperbolic. I think it is the worst film I've ever seen. And you might go, no, there are more incoherent films out there. And I was like, are there? Because this one doesn't really.
Well, certainly in relation to the talent behind the camera, it's a mess. It's just kind of incredible in that sense. I mean, yeah. Wait for the video on that, if everybody. We discuss it in depth. But
yeah.
Other than that, good week. Also watched Howl's Moving Castle this week too, so that was fun.
Yeah, you had to do that brain irrigation thing after you watched all the horrible other crap. You're I got to get something good in there.
Yeah, you have to brighten your day, your week somehow, and Miyazaki's always a good choice.
Well,
definitely.
And that was the mess because me and Ross had watched nothing but garbage for the past while. Where it's almost mind-numbing
like almost
now.
3 movies in a row.
Yeah. And it's kind of mind-numbing at this point where it's just like, what are we doing?
My life is terrible film.
But we watched the Joker. Joker 2, whatever the subtitle is. It hotly anticipated. Sort of the initial reaction by me and most audiences was when it was announced that we're going to go to Joker 2. Everybody was like, oh, like it doesn't need a second movie. It's kind of self-contained and well built on its own. It doesn't need a second film. Why are we doing a second film? On top of that, it's like, oh, Harley Quinn's going to be in it. I'm going to be honest, I have a lot of bias when it comes to Harley Quinn. I hate the character. I hate the character so much. If I was in charge of DC, the first thing I would do is have her murdered in a wood chipper. Like, she would just be gone as a character.
Some slight bias, minor bias.
Minor bias. And on top of that, we have Lady Gaga, who I'm not a fan of, if I'm going to be honest. And so it was sort of embroiled. At least I was outset with a bias coming into this. I didn't think we needed a sequel. I don't like Harley Quinn. I don't like Lady Gaga. And I don't... the word was out that it was going to be a musical, so to speak. And I was like, ew.
Yeah.
Like, why is it a musical? But there was a lot of hope with Todd Phillips, because he made the first one, that he could pull something out with a sequel, and we might pull something out magical. And the word got out early that the reception wasn't looking like it was going to be very good. Ross, why don't you tell me about your experience with Joker 2?
Well, you know, I didn't come into it with as much bias as you, I suppose. Like, I don't really... The only thing I know Harley Quinn from, other than the Suicide Squad movies that I'd never watched, is the animated series.
Yeah. Which is her origin,
so I didn't really care. Like, the musical thing...
Her origin is actually the animated series. It's not the comics.
Right. And, you know, I didn't... You know, granted I was a kid, but... So that didn't bother me. Like, I knew Lady Gaga was good in what was that movie she was in?
Star is Born?
Star is Born, thank you. That remake of the Barbara movie. Barbara Streisand. So I came in and I was just, all right, I'm going to see what the movie wants to tell me. Like, because I was open to it. And as it gets going, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it's still from the outset, I'll say this. It's a beautiful movie still. As far as visually, still really nails that late 70s, early 80s, yucky New York vibe that they gave Gotham in the last Joker film. Yeah. Great. I had like 3 distinct phases going through this movie, and that was, as it got going, I was like trying to, all right, yeah, let's see where this goes, and I kind of go like, God, this is kind of boring, and then it gets to like, oh, they're doing the same thing again, and then it's, oh my God, and that was the movie.
Your overall experience. I loved the first Joker. I think it's really good. It's a nigh on perfect film. It flows really well. It's sort of someone's fall into being a psychopath sort of thing. Mm-hmm. If you were to write an origin story for Joker, it's a great origin story. And we heard up and down from Todd Phillips that he didn't want to do a sequel. No matter what, you don't want to do a sequel. I'm not going to do a sequel. What's that, Jason?
Well, it's nice that you bring this up. This is one of the things that I got a little bit mired in this past week. I was watching a bunch of stuff on YouTube, and one of the things that I ended up watching was a review of Joker 2, and a couple of things that the reviewer brought up was that that the idea of it being a musical was really like groan-worthy. People were like, "What?" But on the one hand, the reviewer was saying that there were 2 things that were good about the movie: Joaquin Phoenix and the visuals. Everything else was crap. The only reason that they got Lady Gaga to be in the movie was so that they could have someone who could actually sing. And so
it wasn't necessary.
Her acting didn't really shine because that's not really who she is and what she does. But
she was fine acting wise.
The movie made. Yeah, but it's not like she was a shining part of the movie that it made the.
Well, we could get into that
better. It was just.
Finish your thought
for what she did. But the other thing was that the movie was a surprise smash hit.
Oh,
It
yeah.
made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And that's why it got greenlit for a sequel. And
Well,
one of the things that the reviewer said is that the money should never be why we do a sequel. And this is a perfect reason. The money came in, we got $1 billion, we greenlit a sequel, nobody wants to do a sequel. The first one was basically a standalone. And so now they're trying to shoehorn this sequel in, make it kind of flow from the last one, and you lose all the magic from the first, from the first translating it into the second, and you come up with a really just piss poor movie.
Well, not to detract from actually reviewing the film, but the first movie cost somewhere in the realm of like $50 million, and Warner didn't believe in it, and they didn't put much into it. A lot. There was some extra private investment, is my understanding, but part of the deal is Warner didn't end up getting as big a piece of the pie when it blew up, and it ended up being one of the biggest rated R movies of all time. So Warner goes,
right,
well, now we're going to insist they make a second one. We're going to give you even more money. And the second one looks like it costs upwards of $200 million. And I guess the expectation is spend more, make more. And they threw it at a guy who didn't want to make a sequel because, believe it or not, him and Joaquin Phoenix, it looks like they made a movie that they didn't want to make. And this is not going to... We could get to the numbers in a minute. So we get a movie that I was expecting to be a musical, and I'm not hyped on that. And the assumption, like you said, is that's why we bring in Lady Gaga. So most of the music is actually not unobtrusive, and I wouldn't really call it a musical. Most of the musical pieces are sort of fantasy elements where Arthur is sort of dreaming to himself about like being able to do things he can't do because of his restricted environment, being in a mental hospital or being in a courtroom or whatever. And so all of the musical pieces are him expressing his fantasies. So the movie isn't really a musical. He's indulging in fantasy of him being able to let loose and do whatever he wants to. Most of the music is like soft spoken in its execution, and there's really only one moment.
Like really singing?
No,
not really singing.
It's more like, I went outside and we did this thing, and it's like to a tone, but it's not really like, you don't require somebody who can sing for those parts. Is the problem. And there's only one musical piece where a Lady Gaga actually could perform in a way where, oh, she's a singer. Other than that, all of the other musical pieces didn't really seem like she was required as a vocalist, so to speak.
So basically, they wasted their efforts.
Yeah, and the music
in
was
a sense,
hugely negative response to it. Sorry, Roscoe.
No, I was just gonna say, in a sense, I mean, they like I was telling Rhett, like this. I mean, I guess we're gonna delve into it shortly, but like this movie had all these elements that I was like enjoying within the film. Like, there's parts in the asylum that I was thinking, oh, they're gonna have like an Arkham Riot thing. Nah, they don't do that. The musical thing, like, oh, they, I think they used it well enough, but they didn't really go as far into it as at least that they were kind of trying to make it seem in like articles. And then there's the courtroom stuff. And you're like, oh, it's going to be like a Joker courtroom drama. And no, they don't do that either. And it's like all these things I would have liked. Maybe not all together in one movie. It'd be a bit long, but like
focused.
They just don't really explore any of it very well.
All of the elements are there, but they're just lackluster and
yeah, well, because the movie
underused.
As Rhett will certainly get into, and it had a much different purpose in mind for itself.
Yeah. By the way, we're gonna try and do this spoiler free. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The movie ended up with how it expressed itself. It ended up creating a film that didn't like the main character. And I'm not talking about how the audience didn't like, or the audience or characters in the show. Like, the character has this huge amount of popularity and hype around the character because of events of the first movie. The movie is trying to tear down the character, because in the first film, which I love, he sort of breaks free of the restrictions of who he was, and now he can fully realize this exaggerated personality of himself, this Joker character. And then the movie starts out with him being reduced to nobody again, drugged up all of the time. So we're back to square one. Whereas the first one, the climax is him fully realizing himself as a Joker. The second one is, we're back to him just being a normal guy who's boring and has nothing going for him, and his life sucks. And I thought, well, what the movie is going to do is it's going to drag us through that. And he's going to have to self-realize again. So it's like we're retreading ground from the first film.
We're doing the same thing we did in the first movie.
And Harley Quinn, who they call Lee in the movie, shows up, and she's obsessed with him, just like the audience and everybody is obsessed with him as this Joker figure, because he was so dynamic and interesting in the first movie. So she is as obsessed with him as Gotham is, where there's a lot of mystique around his personality, and she desperately just wants to be close to the guy. And she's in the insane asylum, and they end up crossing paths. And then they have this little romantic thing where Arthur suddenly has this, hey, look, it's Silver Val. Oh, where are you, loser?
Oh.
Jumped on the stream because she can't get on the Discord. We blocked her.
I didn't block her. But Harley Quinn is sort of attaching herself to him. Almost, and here's the problem with the character or Lady Gaga's role, is she's not in it enough, especially coming from somebody who doesn't like Lady Gaga or Harley Quinn. Silver's being a loser. He's not in it, or she's not in it very much, because her character revolves around being a fangirl of the Joker character of Arthur. So most of what she is to sort of like hype him up, because she wants him to reinitialize the Joker, which once again, I thought we were just going to retread ground until he comes back at the end as a fully realized Joker character. But they don't do that, because the movie doesn't like him. And from what everybody can tell is it seems like Todd Phillips' intention, the movie feels like Todd Phillips wrote a movie to yell at everybody that they were misinterpreting the first film. And he essentially deconstructed the character from the first film, and then wrecked him, and so that anybody who liked the Joker from the first film is not going to be happy with where he takes the character in the second one.
I mean, could some of that be due to the fact that he didn't want to do the sequel? And so he's like, look, you forced me to do the sequel. We're going to do it this way. And it really just tanked because he was like, I'm not doing this the way you want me to.
Yeah. I think there's a part of it, because so there's a meta narrative, which I don't think anybody is really talking about in the way that they need to. So much like people who like the Joker movie, there is a fanfare and obsession with people who love the Joker character in the film. And those characters in the film represent the audience who like the Joker character outside the film. Does that make sense? And so with the obsession around the character in the movie, everybody just wants him to fully realize Joker again. They want him to fully let go. That's what Harley wants him to do. That's all the audience outside the film wants him to do. That's all the fanfare and people of Gotham want him to do. And they drag him into this court case, and all that anyone wants is to him be the person that they have lifted up into a role that they thought he would be. And Todd Phillips seems to be annoyed at people's attachment to the character, so he decided, I'm going to disappoint you on purpose by destroying this character, basically have him reject the Joker role, and then anger the people of Gotham and the audience. Am I wrong, Ross?
That's funny.
Yeah, because that's the thing. This movie not only doesn't like the Joker, it doesn't like you if you liked the previous movie.
No, it's like it's deliberately making fun of you for liking it.
Yeah, which is an interesting tack to take on a $200 million movie. Rhett and I were talking about this after we left the movie, and it is. I mean, that's literally, this movie does that. It without getting into spoilers, it absolutely does that. It does not like what you interpreted the Joker character as, Arthur Fleck, and perhaps even tries to give you the character you did want at the end. But anyway, the thing that's so funny to me is, like, I get that Warner Brothers let this very comparatively cheaply made movie that made $1 billion kind of slip through their fingers, and maybe they didn't get the deal they wanted. But they spent $200 million on a movie that hates its audience and is actively telling you you're wrong. And while I find that interesting, I wouldn't, if I knew that, and especially wasn't on this podcast, I wouldn't have paid money to see it. You kidding me? And I'm not gonna. Odds are very low. I'm gonna buy the Blu-ray for this or whatever. Physical media is not happening. I'm never gonna rent it. And it makes me wonder, like, what happened to the cutthroat producers and studio types that used to exist? Are they just? I mean, this is clearly a decision made out of fear, and I guess considering specifically the DC franchises, past history of the last 5 years or so, and even Warner Brothers themselves, Warner Brother Discovery and all this stuff, maybe they're just screw it, put more money in, and it'll do even better or just as good, and we can get a better cut. And it's like, did nobody watch the dailies? Did nobody see how? Because with some edits, you could have made this movie not actively hate its audience, and they didn't do that. So I just are those types just gone out of Hollywood now? I don't know.
Yes,
they are. To give
They're...
Jason some clarification,
they've been replaced.
We're not being hyperbolic where the movie hates its audience. The audience that saw the first movie desperately wanted to see a fully realized Joker. That's what you want to see in a second one.
Right.
Him becoming the Joker, right, and then Joker. And Todd Phillips is annoyed that that's what you wanted. Totally
makes sense.
Yeah, but Todd Phillips is annoyed that's what you wanted. Joaquin Phoenix is annoyed that that's what you wanted. And so what you get in the movie is Gotham, who wants to see Joker, and instead they're like, Joker's not real, go away. It's almost like he's talking to Gotham like he's talking to the audience of, you're losers who like this character, you're dumb and he sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally pull it away from you. Or like, you want him to be Joker? No.
Now this is where I get confused. Because what were they trying to do with the first film then? If we all got the character wrong, then to me that says that there's a failure on their part as filmmakers in portraying the character the way that they wanted us to
that we could understand. Yes.
And so, yeah. And so what were, if they're so upset with us for demanding a sequel and wanting to see the Joker on screen now, what were they trying to go for here? What was the purpose in making the first movie? Now I get it that they're like, we're not really interested in doing a sequel, and I realized that they were being forced into doing the sequel because the movie was just such a big hit that the the studios saw dollar signs in front of their eyes, and that's what they do now. If a movie does well, they throw money at it until it makes a sequel and takes everything down because everybody's disappointed. But what was the goal here?
Well, Todd Phillips
What did they
has
want
said
us
in
to?
interviews.
How did they want us to
that-
perceive the Joker?
Well, hold on. Todd Phillips has said in interviews that he hates superhero movies. And he said, quote unquote, that he made making Joker was sneaking in a real movie under the guise of a superhero movie. The movie of Joker 2 recontextualizes the character in 1. It actually retroactively damages the character in the first film. He said, you're not interpreting this character correctly. So he literally goes back and damages the first movie because you didn't get it. And then the movie, in a meta sense, is being like, Gotham, like the audience, wants to see him be the Joker, but you're wrong. And you're wrong, and I am going to tear down this character again. The way...
And
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, is it also possible he didn't like, maybe not how, maybe the discourse around the movie? I don't know, because I don't like... anyway.
Well, it should be
Continue,
clarified that this movie doesn't exist in a vacuum. That this movie,
No.
So we had violence as a result of Batman: Dark Knight Rises, and because of that, there was a lot of accusations of incels and whatnot. Remember, the guy went and shoot up the theater in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado. So there was a lot of concern in making this film that it was going to build up like incel violence again, the first movie. And there were a lot of theaters that had like metal detectors going in. There were expectations that people were going to turn this character into sort of emulated, admired psychopathic character that goes out and murders people and stuff. I didn't admire the character. But the problem with psychopaths and people with mental illness and then people who go off and murder, which is a problem I think us as humans need to understand. They're not as unrelatable as we think they are. That the capacity for human violence isn't so foreign to the average person. And when looking at characters like Arthur Fleck, that evil's in all of us. It's not as confusing as people. Well, it's almost like the German guy with the small mustache. It's like, oh, well, he's especially they talk about him like he's an alien. And it's like, you're getting it wrong. All of us have the capacity for this. It's our moral framework. It's how we're built psychologically and stuff. But to treat it like these people are not relatable in the human sense is wrong way to go about it. Evil is understandable to every human being. And that's why Arthur Fleck's story is so fascinating, is because it's relatable for a person who is trying to live in society and is rejected by society constantly, which is what the first movie is about, who has mental illness, that he gets harassed and bullied and whatnot, who's trying to exist in society and at some point just lets go and decides he's not going to try anymore. And he fully realizes this sort of psychopathic Joker character. The second movie just says, no, Arthur was just playing up to the crowd because he's insecure and he wants attention. So no longer was he someone who was... What's that, Jason?
He wasn't actually insane. He was just an attention whore.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Unfortunately,
It damages
our
the first movie.
particular society right now, that's even more
Now, he has mental
relatable
illness.
and understandable.
He has mental illness, but he's not this this psychopath that goes nuts. He's insecure and lonely and wants attention. And a lot of his relationship with Harley Quinn revolves around the fact that he's insecure and lonely and she gives him attention because of the things he did in the first movie. And guess what? At the end, he disappoints everybody because he's just not the amazing character everybody thought he was. So that's how it undermines the first movie.
We can't have nice things.
Yeah. We interpret it incorrectly, and we're going to damage your love of the first film.
Brilliant. Let's see how it plays out.
If anybody's
basically,
clamoring,
if you like the first one, don't go see the second one.
yes, people have actively been saying if you like the first one, it'll damage the first one, so don't see the second. Me and Ross have morbid curiosity, and Ross was like, "Well, I'm going to see it anyway, even if it sounds like it's going to be bad." So we did. It's really interesting with what he was trying to do in a meta sense.
Yeah.
But besides that, if you're an average fan who wants to see a movie about the Joker, you are going to walk away horrifically disappointed. As is,
yeah, it does not deliver in any way, shape, or form.
As is indicated by Rotten Tomatoes reviews. So critics and audiences seem to agree at around a 30% Rotten Tomatoes score that no one likes this
the critics
movie.
are on board with this view.
Yeah, critics do not like it either.
I mean, it's gotten to the point now where you can almost guarantee that if a critic likes a movie, it's going to be a crap movie, and you should skip it. But this is interesting that the audience and the critics are. I mean, they're 2 points off of each other. That's kind of amazing.
Precisely. And here's the funny thing, because there have been articles that have been written where it's like, this movie is for no one besides Todd Phillips crapping on the fans, because it doesn't appeal to people who are fans of the Joker because he doesn't do Joker stuff. It doesn't appeal to people who are there for Lady Gaga because she's underplayed and her role is more of just a fangirl. It doesn't play to critics who wanted to see whatever they were. Like, this movie is for nobody besides Todd Phillips spending $200 million of Warner's money to basically make fun of the audience for liking the first movie.
Wow.
Yes. Like there's literal parallels where Gotham is obsessed with Joker, like the audience in the real world is obsessed with Joker, and he disappoints Gotham just like he disappoints us. And in that sense, he accomplished what he was trying to do. I guess. He sure did. Everybody is saying it's bad or don't watch it. One of the bigger complaints is they don't like it as a musical. I don't think the musical part is as bad as people make it out to be. I think it's mostly boring. No. And its overarching story is built to disappoint you, which is fascinating. Why make a movie like this? Why?
And why spend $200 million on it? Like, what?
Because you're a raging narcissist and a child.
Yeah, yep. But like I mean, yes, for the director, but like again, I go back to what's going on with the studio. Like, that is incredible.
And initial anticipation was 50, 60 plus. It looks like they've had to downgrade to maybe mid 40s for opening weekend.
That's generous. Because Rhett, how did the theater look in our showing? It was a Friday night. How'd it look?
It was mostly empty.
Yeah, pretty sparse. There were more people in the smaller theater watching Howl's Moving Castle, a movie that is 20 years old now. So
yeah, well, we're looking at a disappointing 40 million range, and on top of that, in an unprecedented first superhero movie ever, receives a D rating on CinemaScore, lowest score ever for a superhero related property, a D on CinemaScore. It looks like we're looking for anywhere between 42 and 47 million, which is disappointing considering the $200 million price tag. If this was another $50 million movie, this would not be as shocking because it would still not only make its money back, but probably make a little bit. Yeah. At this point,
people would be morbidly curious to see what it was all about, whether or not they, liked it later is a different story. So they would have been able to get enough people in seats if they'd only spent $50 million to make it worth their while.
3 weeks ago, they were predicting 70. Coming into the weekend, they downgraded to 50 to 60, and now they've downgraded again to the 40
further,
the 40s, and it looks like we're going to get 42 to 47 for an opening weekend. Joker, the first one, debuted at 96, and it was mostly word of mouth and hype around the drama around the movie being made and the word of mouth and whatnot, and turned into a $1 billion movie. So people kept going back to see it multiple times and recommended it to their friends. On top of that, just to get some clarification and remind everybody, Megalopolis opened its weekend with $4 million. Which, by the way, has a higher score on Rotten Tomatoes and a higher cinema score at D+.
Wow.
Oof. So Megalopolis,
I don't know if I look
a steaming pile of horse crap.
I was gonna say, I didn't like Joker 2, but at least Joker 2 is a beautiful looking movie. I can't say the same for all Megalopolis.
At least it's not Megalopolis. And perhaps one of the more discussed articles, news dump.
The Distracted Gamer Podcast. Big steaming pile of news dump.
There's Chance taking to Dookie, getting ready to hear the news.
As he does.
Perhaps the most talked about article to come out this week is the article from IGN. The quote unquote Tolkien professor is basically saying that the Lord of the Rings canon doesn't exist.
Oh my God.
And his argument for that, let's get some exact quotes. In a lore-focused interview released by Prime Video, Dr. Corey Olsen, douche, dubbed the Tolkien professor, doesn't deserve it, offers his thoughts on the most vociferous of debates. According to Dr. Olsen, there is no Tolkien canon. And that's because Tolkien himself was always rethinking his world building even after his books were published. First thing to specify is that there's no such thing really as canon in Tolkien. Tolkien's ideas were ever evolving. Here's the problem, sir. Tolkien has letters that he released explicitly saying that there was canon, and you implying that there isn't really canon because the author kept rejiggering his work. No, there's canon from him. He's allowed to rejigger his work. Your argument is a fallacy. There is canon, and you're not allowed to change it. That's the problem. Tolkien can change whatever the hell he wants to, and especially when he famously liked to play with his work and change timelines, because it's his. And so his argument that there's not really canon because Tolkien would change it, he wrote the damn thing. What do you think?
Yeah,
so there's no canon. It's an awful argument. and this is his effort to defend, I guess, Rings of Power in some way.
The funny thing about this article here is this is not the first time we've run into this article. I think this is the first time we've actually had an academic bring it up. Other people were bringing it up as like critics against the people saying that Rings of Power isn't canon, that it's not following the Tolkien canon. Because there was an article I brought up weeks and weeks ago that had the same topic. But again, it wasn't an academic. It wasn't someone who proclaimed to be a Tolkien scholar. It was just some random dude on the internet saying, well, Tolkien was changing it and rejiggering it all the time. It's like, yes, but that's allowed from the original author. They get to do that. It's theirs, not ours. We don't get to screw around with it.
Yeah, the article has caused a lot of controversy. Let's remind everybody that the real Tolkien author, Tom Shippey, who is mostly considered to be the foremost expert on Tolkien's work, who actually met the guy, was hired by Rings of Power as a consultant and was let go in 2020. And the rumor was he said that they were polluting the lore. Well, he kept saying essentially you can't do that and that's inaccurate, and they let him go.
Yep.
Yep. Just as a reminder, Tom Shippey did exist, and there was negative feedback on that. Oh, by the way, I found out something interesting, Ross. You might be fascinated about this. So in Rings of Power, just as a little side note, the city of Eregion, somebody did essentially notice something fascinating about the city of Eregion in between the first and the second season. I'm going to bring this up for you.
Okay.
Season 1 doesn't have walls, and the city's actually arranged slightly differently. They
And
changed.
they're like, oh wait, we gotta have an invasion, so we gotta have walls.
The towers are actually slightly different if you take a close look. They look different, and that beautiful waterfall in the background doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, that is awesome. That is absolutely hilarious.
So
I didn't even
is busted
realize
between
that.
first and second season.
Good God.
Essentially, the belief is that when they started to do the battle stuff, they decided that they were going to change everything. So they had to remodel the city to fit the battle because they didn't think it through beforehand, I suppose.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
That is my guess. But yes, they actually changed their own city's layout and added walls because they didn't think about it in season 1 and had to change it for season 2.
If you go with what the orcs did, which was basically they made it so that the river was gone, then you no longer have a barrier against their invasion, so you have to put the wall in there. If they had left the river, then they wouldn't have needed to change anything. But then they wouldn't have been able to have the orcs like charging into the city and crap. So
yeah, getting rid of the river would have been a horrific moment. But yeah, they needed walls because they wanted to film it with walls where 8 guys were standing on the parapet shooting at people. At any rate, we don't need to dwell on that. Moving on, so Starfield's first expansion, Shattered Space, receives mostly negative Steam reviews as game seeks to peak. Player count declined by 95%. Apparently, the reception of the DLC for Starfield is not very good, Ross.
I am shocked to hear this.
Famous fan.
Well, maybe not that shocked.
Famous fan of Starfield.
You know what? It's a great tranquilizer. Starfield is it's a very good tranquilizer. I put it on and try to play it, and I just fall asleep immediately.
An article I didn't actually get into the news, but I'm going to read it really quickly. I forgot to include it. Games Radar had an interesting story. Apparently, they talked to Bethesda and asked some questions of some of their execs that worked on Starfield, and they learned something interesting. When asked, what did you learn when making Starfield? The studio's design director said fans really, really, really want Elder Scrolls 6. That's what they learned when making Starfield.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
Fascinating.
What we really learned is they didn't want this game at all.
So Star Wars, interesting. Go ahead, Ross.
I was going to say, which is funny because, I mean, that wasn't the reaction when BioWare made Knights of the Old Republic or Mass Effect. When they stepped out from their fantasy wheelhouse, people were very excited.
Yeah.
I mean, Mass Effect, they created their own IP. I think maybe it's because Bethesda might be a little rotten at its core now, as is BioWare, by the way. I don't want to let them off the hook, but
in a story from Inside Gaming,
sorry, go ahead.
In a story from Insider Gaming, Star Wars Outlaws has apparently sold only 1 million copies in the first month.
Ouch.
Did they
give
sell
you
them at $1,300 per? Because maybe they made their money back.
Uh-huh. To give you some clarification, I think Assassin's Creed Valhalla sold 1.4 million in its first week.
Yeah.
Also, just to remind everybody, Star Wars Outlaws, I think the quote was they spent more money on the press and media for that game than they've spent on any other game that they've made, that Ubisoft has made.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I wouldn't be shocked if we found out that the price tag of this thing is in the hundreds of millions.
I bet you it is. You're probably correct.
Now, take this as a rumor for what it is. And I usually don't like to produce rumors, but I thought it would be funny to bring this up. Ubisoft allegedly spent $650 to $850 million on its Skull and Bones game.
Oh, it's quadruple A game.
Yeah. According to YouTuber ND Meon and his sources within Ubisoft, the project that ruined Ubisoft and put them in dire financial position that they are after is not Star Wars Outlaws soft sales in the second quarter. It's Skull and Bones, which he claimed cost between $650 million and $850 million. And Demian shared, I was also told that the project that ruined Ubisoft was not actually Outlaws, but Shadows. Outlaws or Shadows. It was actually Skull and Bones. My sources told me that they have seen multiple different versions of the game that were each completely different over the years. They said that they were told that the budget that was spent on Skull and Bones, it ranged somewhere between $650 to $850 million over 10 years.
Oh my God.
And that Skull and Bones failed so badly for Ubisoft, it was the actual reason why they're dying and the way they are now.
Because this is the game that they were making that then they kind of spun off into Assassin's Creed Black Flag, right?
No, this is post Black Flag. They said Black Flag's boat combat was so popular, they're going to make a boat game. This was announced post Black Flag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But,
Interesting.
take that rumor for what it is. If it's true, that would be horrific.
Hilarious.
I mean, company destroying. Another bit of news, Zelda Echoes of Wisdom physical pre-orders are outselling Dragon Age the Veilguard 20-1. The Zelda game where you play as Zelda.
That's awesome. See, and this is where this is where we can point and say, look, when you talk about, having female protagonists and how, it's males don't want them and stuff. Obviously, we don't care. This proves the point that we don't care who the protagonist is. Make a good game.
I agree. I'm going to read a couple of rumors really quickly. Apparently, most of the mid executives in Sony and people underneath did not know that Ghost of Yotei was not going to be a sequel with Jin Sakai until they released the trailer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that they were apparently blindsided because they were expecting a sequel and they got a character that's 400 years after the events of the first one.
What are they doing? What's happening? What's going on over at Sony?
Apparently, the top executives
are
are reporting that they were blindsided by the reaction. They did not expect how negative the response was going to be. Not just because it's a woman, but because we're not continuing the story of Jin Sakai from the first one that everybody loves.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were blind. They did not think that we were not going to continue the story, apparently. This is the word from insiders.
That is absolutely hilarious. Hey, I wonder why Sony's having so many problems. Anyway.
This is yet another example of why executives are out of touch.
Another quick rumor. Apparently, the rumor is that Snow White probably has a budget that exploded up over $500 million at this point.
Oh my God. How many reshoots have they done on this now? Oh my god!
According to WDW Pro, which monitors Disney stuff on the inside and does have insiders that they talk to, apparently they were told that there have been 3 reshoots of this film and that Disney is still now working to fix the thing.
Oh my gosh!
Good lord!
So once again,
Do a
take that rumor.
remake.
Take that rumor for what it is. In actual fact, which didn't get included, but I'm going to throw this in really quickly. So a Japanese YouTuber has uncovered something interesting about Ubisoft. Ross, you'd find this fascinating. Apparently,
I'm excited.
Ubisoft hired a native Japanese localization tester, and they were able to locate that native Japanese localization tester is in Chengdu, China.
Is it China?
Oh my god!
Way to go, guys! Way to go!
Nailed it.
And a final thing really quickly, it looks like Jason has something he wants to bring up. The Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii apparently he made some interesting comments at the Tokyo Game Show. Negatively, it seems like towards the Dragon Quest III HD remake, because apparently they included gender neutral terms, and he seemed somewhat annoyed about it and explained that it was probably a Western localization issue. The belief is that if they didn't include that, it would have changed the rating, which would have made it more difficult to sell to younger audiences. There have been some.
Wait, what?
Oh my gosh!
That apparently it would have changed the rating in Western audiences. Now, to clarify, his comments are now being said to be taken out of context. If they were taken out of context, why did Square Enix remove his comments from the internet? That you can no longer access them from the interview that they had at Tokyo Game Show. So, take that for what it is. It's possible that there were mistranslation. But he did have some odd offhand comment of like, I don't understand why they're changing the gender stuff, and it mostly is a Western influence. The internet seemed to have responded really positively by calling him a member of a certain party in Germany in the 1930s or a chud for his comments.
Ah, perfect. Nailed it.
Oh my god!
So I understand, when you say rating, do you mean like the ESRB rating? Like,
yeah, that it
having
would go from something
non-gender
like
neutral
teen,
terms would change it.
It would go something from like general to like a teen or something, is from what I understood.
Oh my gosh! What a
Oh
bunch
my
of
god!
And they
Well,
were
because you know
afraid
what's
it was gonna
funny
affect it.
on that kind of topic, those Suikoden 1 and 2 has finally been like confirmed, and it's like there's actually more info now.
Yeah, we've
For
seen
the
video
Tokyo
and
Game
stuff.
Show, and one of the things that's noticed is there's one character who normally has like a cigarette and like ashtray with him, like like in some of his
And that's been removed.
portraits, and they removed it, but it was for rating, so they didn't get I think over in Europe or Britain get a mature rating or something.
Well, and there was a huge amount of
Whatever they're
accusations of censorship because his comments being removed from the internet and Square and that sort of thing, that they didn't want those to be out. I mean, he's an older guy. He can have opinions he wants to. Really fast. Apparently, one of the new characters who was gender and race swapped in one of the new DLCs for the Kill the Justice League game, the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that did really poorly, is gender and race swapped, and is one of Gotham's newest and most ethical thieves. Lawless is determined to use the skills of a master criminal that her father taught her to redistribute wealth in her hometown. Apparently, she is a communist activist. At any rate, Jason, you have some things to share.
Yeah. So one of the things that, like I said, I got mired in a lot of politics and video games and crap on YouTube recently. And I got to say, for the most part, there isn't a celebrity alive that I want to meet. except for maybe Henry Cavill.
Yeah, he
Maybe
seems
him.
solid.
Yeah. The thing is that so Henry Cavill has shown that not only is he a good actor, but that he actually understands nerds because he is one. The guy paints miniatures in Warhammer 40K. His favorite army is the Custodes. He plays video games. He actually plays video games. It's not just he says it. No, he actually for hours at a time plays video games. One of the videos that I saw with him in it was he was talking about his love of the Warhammer stuff, and he's just like, "Oh, I love playing Total War Warhammer. It's my jam right now." He's like, I can get on, I can play for a while, I can go do other stuff, I can come back to it. And he was hyped for Space Marine 2. He was going to pre-order the thing so that he could have it. I mean, this guy is just pretty solid individual from all that
He just loves it like the rest of us do.
Yeah, exactly. And so he got greenlit at Amazon to do a Warhammer 40K movie / expanded universe thing over there. So like for movies, TV series, a whole bunch of stuff. He's the executive producer. He has said that it is a dream come true for him. And it's something that it's just like, I can't, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, here's this guy, he's incredibly handsome, he's incredibly popular, and he's just like, I can't believe that they greenlit this for me, that I get to do this. He's like, I'm so lucky, kind of thing. It's like a dream come true. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of.
He had a lot of fan support
apparently
in the fallout from Witcher.
Oh yeah. Well, so like I said, his favorite army is the Custodes, and apparently it was Amazon. It was Amazon that forced through on the Games Workshop side the female Custodes.
Yep.
Apparently, what happened was they have this DIE initiative where you have to have like 50% representation, and because there are no female Space Marines, they had a problem with that because
I've heard this
Henry
rumor.
Cavill's Warhammer stuff would have to abide by their diversity, inclusion, and equity crap. And because of that, he's like, no, I'm not going to disrespect the lore like this. And so they basically have until December of this year to figure something out, or it all gets, it all goes away.
Oh, I mean, I've heard this rumor.
If it does,
hopefully,
if something doesn't happen by 2024.
Yeah, I've heard this rumor. Hopefully, it's true. And they respect the lore. And hopefully Henry Cavill is Henry Cavill was labeled by the people at Netflix with the Witcher show as difficult because he constantly would pick fights over lore that they were getting his character incorrectly, to the point where they complained that he wouldn't do shirtless shots anymore for the final season he did. Everybody hates The Witcher now. The first season, they really liked it. And by the time of the third season, it is utter trash and nobody cares. And it's because of their respect for the lore.
And it's because that they don't want to respect the lore. They want to do whatever the crap it is that they want to do. And more power to them. If you want to do your own crap, do your own crap. Just don't label it with the stuff that we like. Because you don't know what you're doing.
The writers on The Witcher were quoted as saying that they hated the original work. They hated the books.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could see it in the show you made.
If that is the case, if that is the case, that you hate the original, you shouldn't be working on it. You should have been fired a long time ago.
There have been actors who have been explicitly told, don't read the original work because it'll put ideas in your head of what it should be, and we don't want you to do that. Did everybody forget that they had a Witcher spin-off prequel series called like Witcher Bloodlines or something like that? That everyone hated and no one watched?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Spent a bunch of money on that one, too. Interesting thoughts to end us with. We really do need to get out of here kicking and screaming because we've got other things to do. But we're super happy you guys joined us.
Yes.
Chance, Val is here. Kind of. She is catching up with Rings of Power, apparently, as she texted me. So
I bet she'll love it.
She's around.
I mean, that's just like that kaiju monster to leave it to the end.
Yeah.
Last minuting everything.
Last minute.
How
and everything.
dare she be busy?
But just like Chance to show up right at the end of, yes, I know we normally show up at 9, but we did this earlier because we've got other things to do. Thanks for coming along, Chance. You're a big waste of time. We're going to get out of here. Podcast outro, bye. Shut up, Chance.
If you like the show, follow Rhett, Jason, Ross, and Silver, the world's most lethally stupid internet personalities, on Twitter at DG Podcast or on Instagram at Distracted Gamers. If you liked or hated what you heard here today, you can email them at thedistractedgamers@gmail.com and share your feelings. Not that Jason would care, since he hasn't any, of course.
Oh my God, it's so juicy.